Hello everyone, welcome to our Fabric video tutorial series. In this video, we are going to cover a very important topic in Fabric. This is about capacities, licensing, and cost optimization in Fabric. So let's start. We'll start with the outline first. The outline will be following. First of all, the building blocks. In the building block slide, we are going to cover the terminologies, the fabric environments, and items which are essential to understand this topic fully. After getting to know these fabric environment, we'll see how these are actually structured together. We will see that how the scaling in fabric, which means changing the computational power, will impact the performance as well as the price. This will be followed by the strategies which are actually used to cut the fabric cost. We'll see what kind of licensing choices are available in Fabric, and in the end, we will have a recap slide followed by a few quiz questions. So let's start. First of all, on the left side, you see those important terminologies. They are tenant, capacities, stock keeping units, billing, licensing, and optimization. So if we talk about the tenant, tenant is actually a dedicated Microsoft Fabric environment of your organization. So this is like an umbrella, and everything in Fabric falls under this umbrella. Whatever you create, whatever you do, actually comes under the tenant. When we talk about the capacities, we are talking about the processing power. So it defines your processing power and nothing else. Stock keeping units are capacity plans. So essentially, both of these things, which means capacities and SKUs, are actually telling you about your processing power or computational power. So these terms might be used interchangeably, but essentially they have the same meaning. Billing is an important aspect, of course, and in Fabric, this is done per hour and not per query. And this is one important distinction that you have to keep in mind as compared to the other services. Licensing defines who can use Fabric and how. Optimization actually refers to your matching SKUs, your computation with your actual workload. So we have to see if it is over or less, and this process or technique will be called optimization. Now, with this understanding, we will have a look at the important fabric component, that how they are actually structured. So here, first of all, tenant. As I told you, the tenant is the top thing. Everything else falls under tenant. So it means when we talk about the capacity, this comes under the tenant as well. Within the capacity, we actually do our real thing, which means creating workspaces. Workspaces are actually those areas where we create everything else in Fabric. For example, your data pipeline or lake houses or whatever kind of items you want to use. In a real world scenario, this can look like this. So first of all, your tenant is from your organization. And in this one, you might have various capacities. For example, a dedicated capacity related to dev and test. And then there is another dedicated capacity related to prod. In the first one, you can have various workspaces dedicated for, let's say, various department. Here in this case, finance and sales. And the same thing is possible, for example, in the second capacity, which is finance and sales. So this is approximately how we can do it in a real world scenario. Now we have this idea about the structure of fabric items, how they are actually structured and organized. And with that knowledge, we move on to the fact that how we can scale fabric. So the scaling fabrics means changing the processing power. We have the various possibilities. We start with the F2. This is the lowest capacity, lowest computational power, and we can increase further. And this actually doesn't end here, F128. It goes up till F2048. So when we increase the capacity numbers, we actually increase the performance. Yeah. But with this performance increase, cost increases, and it really can increase rapidly. So we have to watch out for that. So if we go into a bit of detail, for example, the billing unit is the capacity units per hour actually, as we mentioned, this is per hour in Fabric. So F2 belongs to, F2 actually refers to approximately 2 capacity units, and it costs around 0.18 per CU per hour. And this gives you approximately $262 a month. And if you move from F2 to F4, we have already $526 per month. And if we move to F32, then you can see that this is above $4,000 a month. And the highest capacity can cost you approximately $270,000 a month, which is very, very expensive. So if you accidentally choose it, then this can be really expensive. So be careful. Now with this one that we understand about the processing power in Fabric, let's move on and see how we can actually reduce the cost related to Fabric. So first of all, Fabric is about choosing the right SKUs. So you should not select a higher SKU, for example, F64, when you don't know that you really require it or not. So always start from the lower SKUs and go upward based on your requirement. Second thing is about pausing capacity. You can actually pause the capacity. This is possible. So for example, if you see that you don't have any workload running on weekends or at the evening or whatever time, you can always pause the capacity and hence save the cost. Changing of capacity is possible in Fabric. That means that you can increase your capacity or you can reduce the capacity. So for example, at some time you realize that you don't need a higher capacity for your workload, you can always change it and you can reduce the cost. Pricing are actually based on regions. So in the case that you are not compliant to stick to one region, you may choose to go to a region which offers cheaper prices. Then there are some more strategies to cut the cost. And here, for example, this is in the real world scenario. You can think about dedicating separate spaces for your dev environment and prod environment. And in this way, you will not only organize it properly, but you will also be flexible with choosing the capacity. For example, instead of like choosing one large capacity and using all the environment in there, it is better to choose small capacity and make multiple capacity. And this hold not only for dev test and prod environment, but also, for example, if you are dealing with different departments and project, this will also be a good strategy to cut the cost. Now we have a better idea of Fabric capacities, how we can cut the cost. And now let's move on to the licensing option. There are three kind of licensing option available in Fabric. This is free, pro, and premium per user. In the free tier of licensing, you can create all Fabric workloads, but you're not able to share Power BI reports below F64 capacity. So if you're choosing F64 capacity, below F64 capacity, you will not be able to share the Power BI report content. However, for that purpose, you may choose Pro. And Pro actually allows you to share PIB Power BI report in even smaller capacities, and that should be not a problem. So if your aim is here to share Power BI reports and you are using less capacities, then go for Pro. However, there is an alternate as well. So Pro is suitable for big organization, but if your company is not so big, then the better option is premium per user, where you will be able to do the same thing as Pro, but you don't have to buy a Pro license for the whole organization, right? Rather than you do it for per user. Now this is about the licensing. And so we discuss until this point about the various things. The various things mean like we discuss about the capacities, tenant, workspaces, licensing, and we discuss also about the cost, etc. Let's try to put this thing together and let's see at the hierarchy in Fabric how these things are actually um, let's say linked or can be defined once again. So the tenant first. Tenant, it's where you belong simply because, as I said, tenant is a Fabric environment dedicated to your organization. So you belong to this organization. So this actually defines where you belong. License, who you are. This defines that who you are, and then based on that, um, of course, that what can you do within the Fabric. Capacity actually defines how it runs, how what is the processing power of your work items and workload. And in the end, workspace is the important thing, and what you work on is actually the main thing where you're working on. Whatever you create in there, for example, your data pipeline, your lake houses, your data warehouses, etc., etc., everything is done within the workspace. So this is kind of a hierarchy in Fabric. So with this one, we actually covered the important detail of these items and environment, Fabric environment. And let's move to our recap slide and see what we did actually. We know the structure, how it is organized. First of all, we have tenant on top, then we have the capacity, and then under that we have the workspace. We have to always choose the right SKU, yeah, and this gives you a balance between performance and cost. We know that billing is hourly, and we can pause it when it is idle, and we can scale it higher when needed. Licensing defines access, so there are three options available: free, pro, or premium per user, and we can match to our use cases. And with this one, I hope that you have now gained a better understanding. Let's go to a couple of quizzes and see if you understand it properly. And our first question is, what does SKU represent in Microsoft Fabric? Is it a data set? It's a capacity plan, storage unit, pricing discount. Think about that and we will discover the right answer. And this is the capacity plan. So actually SK represent you a capacity plan within Fabric. The next question is, how is Fabric capacity built? Is it per query, per user, per hour, or per month? And the right answer, I hope you guessed it correctly, is per hour. The last question, which is not a cost optimization tip? Pausing capacity when idle, starting with the largest SKU, monitoring utilization metrics, or separating dev test from prod? And the right answer is starting with the largest SKU is not the correct strategy to optimize the cost. And with this one, we end our video. I hope that you like the video and we will continue our series and we'll discover and discuss the further topics in Fabric. Thank you for watching.